Welcome to another episode of The Power of Story and Science. In this program, we have both content and conversations on communication techniques that are relevant to people giving technical presentations, in particular, how to connect with your audience so that your information actually goes somewhere. And in today's episode, we're going to have a conversation. It's my pleasure to have a conversation with Rebecca Murray, who is joining us from the Washington State area, and I will let her introduce herself to you now. So we might as well jump right in. Welcome, Rebecca.
Welcome, David. Great to be here. By way of introduction, I am a producer, director, entertainer living in the Skagit Valley in Washington State, which is located halfway between Seattle and Vancouver, BC. I'm here today in my upstairs studio, which used to be a photography studio and now is fully converted to a video studio. Thank you, COVID-19. And then I have an editing suite downstairs. And this is all I do is either doing technical work for other companies or, as today, for example, for myself with you.
Okay. And you had also mentioned to me your a book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, it's a children's book that is called The Bird and the Hippo. I wrote this book when I was 10 years old. I discovered that I wrote it a few years ago when I was looking through some old papers. Doing that was the result of a friend of mine who lived in the Napa Valley. You probably recall those big fires.
Yes.
The first big fire in 2017, October of 2017.
Mm-hmm.
I had just gotten back from visiting her in her beautiful home there up on a hill, and she lost everything.
Oh.
Now, we'd been friends since high school, so I knew that I had yearbooks and papers and cards, and we were on the track team together. So many times we were in the local paper in Davis, California. And so I promised her, I said, I'm going to go through everything I have, find anything connected to you, and ship it to you. Once I finally got around to doing that, thank you. Well, and I didn't even think twice about it, but we're one and the same person. I feel like she and I, if I ever want to look at those things, I'll go visit her and look at them. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So in rifling through those papers, I found a plain construction paper folder with the word journal on the front. And when I opened it up, I found all these treasures that I wrote in the 5th grade. One of them was called The Bird and the Hippo. In reading it, it's all dialogue between this bird and this hippo with this big message about how to move forward when you make a mistake, how to say I'm sorry when you get in a fight with someone. And really the big message is to stay connected over time, which they did their entire lives. And so I presented this book many times orally, acting out the characters and the voices. And every single time I did, people would say, you need to publish that. You need to publish that. Well, publishing a book, I don't know. You've published?
Yeah, I have
published.
I have some books for speakers.
Yes. It's a lot of work, isn't it?
It is. It truly is. My third book, as we record this episode, my third book is in the hands of my editor right now, and it is a lot of work, a lot of back and forth.
Yes, lots of back and forth. Well, I needed to find an artist because this is not.
Yeah,
this is not my artwork.
I didn't need an artist for mine, so.
So that was the first order of business, is to find an artist, and I just so happened to find one who grew up in South Africa. She lives not too far from me in Edmonds, and she's a fabulous oil painter. Well, I told her I wanted this in watercolor, which she had never done before. She'd also never done a children's book before, but
Really?
she said it was more like a spiritual thing. She felt called to do this. And so taking this book and creating these amazing photos, and she's so creative. I let her have total creative control. She saw my sketches that I did when I was in the 5th grade, but I'm a real believer we're all artists. Scientists are artists.
Oh, yes.
We're all artists in one way or another. and I couldn't wait to see what she came up with. So a year ago, last Christmas, she and her husband came over. She had this giant cardboard thing where she had all the art perfectly
Mm-hmm.
placed,
All of her
protected.
portfolio. Yeah.
Yes, opening it up, one image after another, and I just remember being so overwhelmed. I just burst into tears. It was so. I just felt so blessed, so blessed. And then that was finally the start of, and now it's taken a year. The book is actually coming out. I mean, I'm waiting right now for the printer. Ingram is sending my first order of 50 of these
Ah, okay.
to.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a
Yeah.
milestone. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
as you know.
And we had a conversation by email, and I don't have it in front of me, but I was kind of asking you a little bit about how we connect that with
Hmm.
the theme of this program, which is scientists giving technical presentations, and you say we're all artists. Science to me is a very creative endeavor. It's that striking out into the unknown, expanding the boundaries of what we can know about your subject area, and that joy of discovery. You had that joy of discovery when you saw what someone had done with your ideas to turn them into art.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. The joy of discovery. I remember my brother, who is a physicist, theoretical physicist, super, super smart. Compared to him growing up, I always felt inferior until I realized we both went to UC Davis together. Until I realized, because I actually changed majors to get away from physics, gravity, vectors. I mean, um, calculus, all those things are very confusing. I think unless you have a brain wired for that, it just makes no sense. Not interested. But my brother then in his senior year had to take first aid. And
Oh,
in first aid, you learn about diabetes, how to if somebody, what's the difference between diabetic coma, diabetic shock, all these body related things, which for me was second nature, learning that.
okay.
So when he called me and he said, I'm failing this class, can you help me? That was when I finally realized we're both smart in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
We're both creative, we're both smart, and my inferiority complex pretty much went away.
Oh, good.
I know.
Good for you.
It is good. It is good. So to embrace those things, I think, pulling some of those um, examples in, like I do some website work. It's not my favorite thing to do, but I produced a class or hosted a class. It was a 90-minute class in which I taught the average person how to kind of the nuts and bolts of websites. So, always thinking of fun analogies, trying to shake it up to make that very boring, dry subject palatable and understandable to the average person. So this is a really good example and relates to all kinds of technical presentations. I said, here's the thing. I run into a lot of people who you all know what a domain is, right? That's like an address for your website. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
you have this address, you have to go register that address somewhere, and you need access to it's like where your site lives. So if you don't have access to your domain, which a lot of people don't because they hooked up with somebody who's going to design their site, and they go, you know what, I'll take care of that for you, I'll register your domain for you. And this is why people lose control of their domains, because they don't own them, someone else has access, and the credit card expires or whatever million things where they lose
Mm-hmm.
control. I said it's kind of like this. It's like I say, do you have an address? Do you know where you live? Yeah. Okay. Can you get there? uh, I think so. Okay, so what if you could get to your house and you didn't have a key to get in? What would you do?
Mm-hmm.
That's like having a domain for your
Mm-hmm.
website
Mm-hmm.
and not being able, first of all, not knowing whether it's at GoDaddy or domain, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
domains.com,
Yeah.
and not having access to it because you really don't own it. So it's just finding these other ways of describing things, and I often personify uh, uh, things, and it's very similar to the bird and the hippo, giving them voices. So maybe you shake it up a little bit by your domain becoming a character. I'm all about infusing characters and fun into technical presentations just to keep them lighter, more engaging,
I
and
love that
keep
idea.
people laughing.
Yeah, keep people laughing. I love that idea of personification. Tell you what, I'd like to hear more about that. But I think what we'll do right now is we'll take a short break, okay?
Okay.
And when we come back, I want to hear more about how you simplify things and make them engaging using personification, as you were just doing.
Okay.
This is The Power of Story and Science. I'm David Odie. My guest is Rebecca Murray, and we'll be back after this short break.
You are a knowledgeable expert, and you want your expertise to make a difference to your audience, but you can't see them and gauge their reactions. Therefore, you need new tools for engaging that unseen audience. Hi, I'm David Odie, offering you a way to pick up those tools. In my new self-paced online course, you will discover 3 ways to improve your story, 1 fascinating tool for hooking your audience's attention, and 8 details in your physical environment that will set you apart from other virtual presenters. Today's technical presentations are going virtual, and that means you can reach a wider audience as long as you understand how to serve that audience. So join me for the online course, Own the Virtual Stage. Confidently connect with an unseen audience. Just go to ownthevirtualstage.com for details.
And we're back. I'm David Odie on The Power of Story and Science, and having a conversation today with Rebecca Murray. And I love some of the conversation we've had offline about personification and the limitless nature of what we're really now able to do in this virtual space. And that's something that you particularly work with people on, is using their virtual space, I believe, for doing presentations.
Yes, yes. And when COVID first started, we all got pushed into this space. Some of us have been here for years, but many people got pushed in. I think a lot of people had this idea that it was like a prison. You're in a cell, you're in a box.
In a box, yeah.
I choose to think of it as a playground. And that's what I encourage people to think of it as, because think of if we were on a stage, and I wanted to change costumes, for example. I wanted to become a character. That would be very hard to do in 3 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to run off stage, get dressed. Something else would have to happen on stage so the audience wasn't confused, and then I'd run on back on.
Yes.
But what I'm able to do is set things up in advance, just 2 feet over. Run off. I can keep talking. I can keep the characters going, and then I can come back as somebody else. Or presto changeo, I turn around in this chair, and now I have things stashed over here, and now I become maybe the Queen of England. Who knows? Or the Queen of Engagement. You could do anything with voice, character. So I wanted to take you over here to my wardrobe and prop room. This is only part of it. But before I do that, I just wanted to go over these 5 principles that I enjoy talking about.
Good.
To get people outside of the prison and into the playground.
Out of the prison and into the playground. I like that. Okay, 5 principles.
And who doesn't want to be in the playground? I want to be in the playground. So the first one, and this is a largely, I think what you talk about too, is to master your virtual image. That be visual, sound, background, all of those things,
right,
so that you're not creating any barriers between you and your virtual audience. Number 2 is to have a plan of engagement mindset, which means I have a presentation that I want to give. And instead of what am I going to be saying, and you have a different way of saying this that I really like, what am I going to be telling the audience? What am I going to be sharing with the audience? It's how am I going to be engaging the audience? It's a completely different way
It
of
is.
thinking.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and then those three specific ways to engage are interactions. What type of interactions do I want? Am I going to use chat? Am I going to have hands raised? Am I going to ask somebody to unmute and use their voice? Where along the line can I infuse interactions? Also,
Right.
how can I change audio visual variety? So pull in a character, show something on the screen. I'm a big fan of using myself as a prop versus, I will use sound effects and I'll use some video and photos only if it makes sense, only if I can't do it and it really supports what I'm trying to teach. And then lastly, entertainment, which I think for some people, and that would be laughter, humor. It's interesting when I taught the last class on virtual engagement, and I asked people to think about in what talent they might have to entertain. And I realized my mistake because you know what? Sadly, a lot of people don't think they have talent. And there were several people that just were like, I don't think that I have a talent. So I needed to find a different way of asking that question because storytelling is a talent. Being a scientific genius
is a talent.
You don't have to necessarily know how to play a harmonica to have talent. Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So here I'm going to take you over to camera 2.
Okay.
Where I have, and I'm going to adjust my microphone here.
Okay.
So I don't sound too far away. But here are some of the things that I use, and I come up with new things for just about every presentation that I do. I have sort of core presentations. So for example, this is Mrs. Murray, who I have a story time show, and she's from England, and she always has a cup of tea and a hot pot of water there. This is a wig. I have several wigs. This is one for a character who talks about shame. Doesn't it look shameful? I think so.
Okay.
Here's a nun. This is my habit.
All right.
Where I sing from The Sound of Music. You know, the nuns in The Sound of Music. So I sing to lots. This is Disco Dave's jacket. He's a comedian, and then he also does an interactive workshop and getting people to sing these crazy, outrageous, made-up songs.
Love that jacket. I think I may need one.
Oh, okay. Yes, I have a few here. So as you can see, I just have a lot of fun. I believe it's going back to this playground analogy that when we have an opportunity to be in front of an audience and we know what we want to say, we're clear on our message, then we take that and I use a red marker and I go through it and for every one of these 3 things, the interactions, audio, visual, variety, and entertainment. And sometimes I hit all 3 just by doing one thing, right? But it's sort of, it's like in the comedy business, it's laughs per minute.
Okay.
In the virtual sense, I look at engagements per minute, EPM.
Ah, engagements per minute. Okay. And you count engagements as
either an interaction with the audience, so they're nodding. I have like a sign language thing that I teach to a song. So that whole song where I'm teaching sign language, 100% engagement, right? So interactions, how do I get them to put something into the chat? I respond to it. We're having a conversation. The audio visual variety, which could be a slide deck, it could be a video, or it could be just yourself changing shape and form, pulling a sign. This is audio visual variety, just putting this book into the frame.
Sure.
Something as simple as that. And then engagement to spice things up and make people lean in. I say listen, lean in, and laugh.
Listen, lean in, and laugh. Okay.
3 L's. So tonight, for example, I'm this is my Robin Hood. This is my Robin Hood hat.
Ah, okay.
But tonight I'm taking the feather out and I'm going to be an elf.
Okay.
So, Amazon is great for, I want a crown for something. I want a Robin Hood or Peter Pan or an elf, just to do, and I think, it takes some courage. It takes being a little daring.
A little vulnerable.
And a little vulnerable, but commit to it. If you commit to it, that's the thing. If you're not sure, you're like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Oh, I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to sound stupid. Then the audience,
they're not going to be comfortable either.
Yeah. They're not going to be comfortable.
Commit to the bit. Yeah, commit to the bit.
There you go. Commit to the bit. So that's how I do it, and that's why I'm having so much fun. And yeah, FUN.
Sure.
So yeah.
Because when you're having fun, the audience has fun too. And then that makes it more memorable for them as well. Because as another guest has said, you're not just giving them a speech, you're giving them an experience.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And that's what I try to do with my clients too. I push them a little to get out of their comfort zone, because we can always tell if somebody's reading a teleprompter. Can you tell?
Oh yeah.
I mean, even if it's one of those that's going right across the lens, you can always tell. And for me, at least, complete disconnect.
Yeah. It's really hard to avoid that telltale giveaway eye scanning when you're looking at the teleprompter.
Yes.
I've done some of that, and it's not easy.
I agree. So let's get rid of the teleprompters. Let's just be ourselves. Let's have a mindset of there's nothing I'm going to do wrong here. With the heart of connecting.
With the heart of connecting. That's right. Of serving your audience. And I think maybe the phrase I had used that you were calling back to was when I said, you're not there to serve information, but you're there to serve your audience.
Yes.
Because so many people giving technical presentations get so caught up in the information. And I know I've done that. I've told the story on this program before and in my books about being involved in a training project that was the thing that ended up catapulting me ultimately out of broadcast engineering and into a second career as a trainer, speaker, and speaking coach. And in that project, a group of engineers got together and thought, well, the way we solve this problem of getting people to adapt or adopt this new digital technology is to give them lots of information about how the technology works. And that didn't work. And then I spent some time with people who were using the legacy technology that was about to be replaced. And I said, well, what do you want to know? And they said, I don't want to know any more about how it works. I just want to know how to avoid getting yelled at when I come into work one day and I don't know how to use this new equipment. So I thought, wow, okay, that's solving a completely different problem. It's not about lack of information. It's about overcoming their fear and replacing it with confidence.
Yes.
And as soon as we went back and decided we weren't going to be so information centric as focusing on how does this affect the way you do your job, we had a training program that was ultimately very successful. But we had to move away from that engineer's mindset of, I'm going to put this fire out by throwing information on it.
Yes. And perfect information, absolutely accurate, 100% bulletproof information. And I think that's the trap that many speakers and presenters get locked into, and especially ones who are very dependent on their slide deck.
Oh, yes, that's right. Can't present without their slide deck.
It reminds me of Linus and his blanket. I can't go on without my blankie.
Yeah, that's right.
And my personification of that, and I haven't fully developed this character yet, but his name is PowerPoint Phil. PowerPoint Phil with a pocket protector, probably a bald head. It's going to look horrible, but PowerPoint Phil just thinks PowerPoint's the best thing that's in sliced bread. And we know there are great ways to use PowerPoint, and there are many disengaging ways to use PowerPoint. And I think in the scientific community, it's and thank goodness for folks like you, helping people not read their. I'm amazed at how I worked with an engineer last year, and he said that in his entire career, I said, count them up. How many PowerPoints? I'm trying to get him away from using PowerPoint. How many PowerPoints do you think you've created? Because he can use PowerPoints like to make French toast. You know, I mean, he has so many different ways to use PowerPoint for everything. And he goes, I don't know, probably 30,000 PowerPoints in my career.
Yeah.
30,000 PowerPoints. Finally getting him away from that took about a year. But boy, the change in engagement with his staff, and they were so grateful.
Oh my goodness, I'm sure they were. Yeah, because they'd experienced death by PowerPoint so many times.
Yes. Oh my gosh, another meeting.
The thing I always tell people is those slides, that slide deck, is not the presentation. We have this miscommunication throughout the speaking industry when a meeting planner will say, well, will you upload your presentation to the thus and such so people can download it? And I say, I'll be happy to upload my visual aid with the disclaimer that this is not my presentation. And the thing I tell people is your PowerPoint is your visual aid. It is not the presentation. You are. You know,
Right.
I came up
Right.
with my own definition of the presentation, and tell me if you have something that's different than this. I tell people your presentation is everything your audience perceives you to do, to say, or to show them from the time you have their attention until the time you relinquish it.
Absolutely. And I think the other danger in the PowerPoint, you know, somebody who depends on PowerPoint like that, is that they can't be spontaneous.
That's right.
And it's that lack of spontaneity that the audience, I think, is really tapping into. Because it can't, are you really
They're not being
truly
present.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
I'm sorry.
Let
I
your
stepped on you.
presence, let your presence be your present. Let your
Mhm.
presence be your present by being present.
That's right. Be present. Don't be so caught up in what is the next bullet point that I'm going to reveal here.
Yeah, or if you memorize, this is why I don't memorize things anymore, except for the, you know, basically the outline, the engagement piece. I memorize like what engagement did I decide I was going to do at this point. That's what I memorize.
Mhm.
And the rest takes care of itself. But in those days, the old days where I was memorizing every word to a speech, I would stop myself. I'm like, oh, that's not the right sentence. Wait a minute. That's not the right word.
Mhm.
Oh, now I'm completely lost. I'm
You're
not present.
completely lost. You're not present with your audience at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, what is, you gave us 5 principles a few minutes ago. Is there one overarching takeaway that you'd like people to have when it comes to applying what we've been talking about to a scientific, engineering, or other form of technical presentation? What's the one key thing that you would say if I only gave you 3 sentences?
Mm-hmm. I would say simply to have an engagement mindset. An engagement mindset. What can I do to interact with my audience? Interact. And that's the same thing that you say, really, in terms of serve your audience, not your information. It's the same concept, just spoken in different words.
Okay. All right. I've enjoyed this conversation, and just looking at the timing here, it looks like we're going to have to draw it to a close. Before we do that, what would you like to leave our audience with in terms of a way to follow up with you or to engage with your products or services?
Yes. Well, I think I would probably invite them to visit Rebecca P as in Pierce, Murray.com. You can find my Bird and Hippo book for sale there, and also my keynotes, more of my training opportunities. My production company, different company, is mostly for local companies here, since I can't, you know, pick up a camera and go jumping on a plane across country.
You have
There,
your studio.
you know what I'm
Right.
saying? So my virtual offerings really lie on RebeccaPMurray.com.
RebeccaPMurray.com. Well, Rebecca, I'm sure that my audience has enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. Thank you for taking the time to help us hear about those principles and personification and connecting, the continuing to engage with your audience, because I think that is all so very important. Thank you for taking the time to be here.
Thank you, David. I've thoroughly enjoyed myself.
Good. If anyone would like to know how to get in touch with me with feedback on this program or suggestions for future guests, the most direct way to do that would be to go to storyandscience.com. That's simply storyandscience.com. That will take you to the homepage for this podcast/vidcast, and you can explore my website from there as well and find, if you like, any of the buttons that say schedule consultation. Go to your calendar and grab 15 minutes that works for you, and I'll be happy to have a conversation with you. Thank you for being part of the community of the power of story and science. I'm David Odie.